The views and opinions of the guests of Veterans Archives do not reflect the views and opinions of Veterans Archives, its subsidiaries, or its partners. Hello and welcome to Veterans Archives. This is a podcast where you can learn about our military history in the words and voices of the men and women who lived and created it. I'm your host, Bill Krieger, and let's listen to our next story. Today is Thursday, March 30th, 2023. I am talking with Drake Smith, who served in the United States Navy. So Drake, let's start out right from the beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born June 7th, 1994. I was born in Selene, Michigan. I lived there for 3 years, I think, and then my parents split, and we moved to Selene, and I basically grew up there for the rest of my life until I was 18, and that's when I joined the Navy.
What was it like growing up in Selene, Michigan?
It was really nice. I remember, growing up in the summertime or on weekends, riding my bike all over town, hanging out with my friends, being home when the streetlights come on, feels like a different time now, but it was a nice, quiet town. I really liked it. Okay.
And what about school? How were you in school?
I was not a good student at all. I think I graduated high school with a 2.1 GPA. I was in the bottom 20 people of my class of 400, so not very good there.
Okay. And then, so I assume that college was not on the horizon for you.
No, it was not. At least I thought. Even before I graduated, I had the mindset of I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to go to college just to go and rack up a bunch of student loans and debt. And my parents growing up were never very well off, so it's not like I had, if I was going to go to college, I was going to have to pay for it myself. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do, and I don't want to spend years finding out, racking up a bunch of student loans. So then my junior year is when I started, looking at other options like the military, and kind of looked into maybe doing ROTC. I actually had a recruiter from each branch kind of came to my high school one day and did a presentation in a class. So I sat in on that. Each branch had you fill out a little questionnaire thing, and I filled each one out because I was like, Army, maybe ROTC, something like that. But I just filled it out. And the Navy guy was the one who called me first, and I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll come in and sit down and have a conversation with you, and it just kind of took off from there.
All right, so Navy by default then.
Yeah, they were just the first ones that called, so I was like, I gotta go see what it's about, and so I sat down in the recruiting station in Selene and took the little practice ASVAB, and funny enough, the recruiter was like, told me after the facts, I scored pretty high, 85 or something on the practice test, and he was like, yeah, looking at your your grades and your ACT score, I thought you were dumb. And he's like, but it looks like you did pretty good on this test, so have you ever heard about the nuclear program? And me, I was like, oh no, I don't know nothing about it. And then he just kind of suckered me into doing that.
So the nuclear program, that's one of the highest programs the Navy offers, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of technical school and all of that. Mm-hmm. When did you actually go to basic training?
Let's see, in January of 2013. So okay. I graduated in May of 12, and then I had a few months off. And then, I left in January. So throughout high school, I actually worked at McDonald's in Selene. So I did that for a couple of years while I was in high school. And then pretty much right after I graduated, I quit that job, and I was like, I'm about to go join the military, so I'm going to take a couple months off and spend time with family and my girlfriend at the time, and just kind of enjoy that stuff before I get shipped off.
Yeah. So you went to Great Lakes. Is that was the only basic training open at the time, right?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, and tell me about what was it like stepping off the bus into basic training?
It was kind of shock. I mean, it's pretty similar to what you see in movies and all that stuff. As soon as you hit the ground, they're yelling at you, and they line you up and they tell you got 5 minutes to call your family and tell them that you made it. Probably not even 5 minutes, probably 2 minutes. You have enough time to call them and tell them you're alive and you made it to boot camp, and then hang up the phone, and then it's just boom, 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 constantly going from there, getting, yelled at and all that stuff.
Right. Right. Did you learn any good lessons in basic training?
I definitely feel like it was a good experience, like being on my own really for the first time. It was, like I said, it was a little hard at first. And I was like, the first week I was there, I was like, oh man, I really messed up. I'm regretting this. Like, what am I doing? And then, after you just kind of get used to it and you're like, you get in the flow of things. But, yeah, I don't really remember learning anything like super other than how to fold my underwear properly and make a bed, which I was never much of a bed maker, but.
Do you make your bed every day now?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. I was just checking.
No, I know I'm not one of those bed making people.
Okay. All right. So after basic training, where did you go?
No. So then after basic training, I went to, Charleston, South Carolina, or technically Goose Creek. That's where the naval nuclear power program is at. So they have, depending on what rate you are, they have, I guess either way, they have 3 different schools. You have your A school, which is broken up into like the 3 specific rates. And then you have the power school, which everybody attends the same power school. And then you have prototype, which is, they have what they call moored training ships, or like, the 626 and the 635, they were old, ballistic missile submarines, and they chopped them up and basically just have from the like engine room and a little bit forward, but they're just training reactors basically. So all the students get to actually see what it's like to stand watch and kind of get a feel for what they're going to do in the fleet. And also it's like another I don't want to say training. There's a training tool, but it's also like you filter out the people that they aren't going to make it as tests and all that stuff, like evaluations, to make sure you can actually make it into the fleet, make it in the fleet before you get out to the fleet. So it kind of like weed out some of the people who aren't going to make it.
So let's go back a little bit and talk about your. So you have your A school for your rating, and so what rating were you?
I was an electrician's mate.
Okay, and what was that school like?
So we learned a lot of basic electrical theory and some like motors and generator stuff, and so like some little like digital electronic theory, and mostly it was pretty basic stuff in the beginning, and then at the next school, in the power school, they focus more so on the nuclear side, like the physics and chemistry and like reactor theory. So they dive a little more into that, which I did a lot better in that school than the first school.
So you're a 2.1 GPA student in high school, and now you're learning nuclear theory in the Navy at power school.
Yeah, so that was definitely definitely on me. I was probably too smart for my own good in high school, and I just didn't apply myself. I didn't do the homework. Like, I usually did pretty good on tests, but like, I was like, I'd rather hang out with my friends or do whatever than do homework. So, you could be the smartest kid in the class, but if you don't do the work, you get crappy grades. So I think that's what it was. And when I was like freshman or sophomore, I'd like to skip class and not go. So like, one of my classes I failed because I missed so many days, and, that just makes your transcripts worse. So it's like pretty much by my end of my sophomore year, I was like pretty much unrecoverable. Like I was lucky to graduate, honestly.
So think about this, like those are all things you just couldn't get away with in the Navy, right? You had to do your homework. You had to show up to class. You had to do all of those things.
Yeah. Me thinking, I don't want to go to college and do this. End up going to like basically Navy college and, doing that for a year and a half.
And so what was prototype school like? What can you tell me about that?
Let's take a quick break.
Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on donations from our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and would like to support our continued efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the donate button. Thank you.
It was a lot less like classroom focus. So like they have like a off crew and on crew portions. Like it's mostly like self-paced. So you have all the resources, like the technical manuals and all that stuff to learn, and then you have a big checkout book, and you have a checkout on each like system and like different theories and all this stuff. And so like you basically just one at a time, you can go and get these checkouts, and there's instructors there that are qualified to give you these checkouts. So you basically, pick a checkout you want, like say, basic electrical theory. You study up on that, and then you go to one of these instructors and say, hey, can I, do this checkout? And then they say, yeah, and they ask you a bunch of questions, and if they think you have, satisfactory knowledge, they'll sign it off. And you, like I said, you have a big book of all that you have to complete by the time you, your final board. And then, so then after so many weeks, you move on to the on-crew portion, which is, you do rotating shift work, and you're on the actual submarine training ship they have there. You're actually standing watch. You're actually getting some like hands-on experience, but at the same time, you still have all those checkouts. Like, but some of them are like, go do this specific thing on the boat, like, do this drill, or like do this maintenance item, or like see how it's, performed and stuff like that. So it's just a big book, and get all these signatures. And then at the end, you, when you're book complete and you're ready to sit down, and you do a board, and you, basically interview with, a senior enlisted person, a senior, officer, and then a naval reactor civilian that works there as well. And then you get to demonstrate enough knowledge for all of them to pass you, and then that's when you're officially done.
So all the way throughout this process, they're weeding people out too, right? Mm-hmm. So you can get all the way through and be book ready and still not pass this board. So that's a year and a half of a lot of stress, I would imagine.
Oh yes, and it's at least it's a nice break in between. So you have because every end of every class there's like a final comp that they call it. So like, it's a comprehensive exam from everything that you've learned throughout the whole school. So, at the end of every one, everybody's freaking out because you fail that test, you get like one retake, but then it's like you fail that retake and you're done, you're out of the program, and there's like nothing you can do about it.
Right. So after a year and a half, all the school, you make it through prototype school. Are you now certified to work at a nuclear power plant? Is that how that works, or what happens after that?
So after that is basically like you, it's still kind of just like initial training, and then the next step is you go to either your submarine or your aircraft carrier, and then you basically kind of have to repeat the whole prototype process again on your boat. It's basically the exact same thing, a lot of the same checkouts and everything, but it's specific to that plant, that ship. Whereas like the prototype boats are like from the 60s, so like it's technology that four generations ago. Like, a lot of the same theory is the same, but the technology is different. So it's really just to see if you can do it, so that way when you get to your boat, they know you're capable of doing it. But like I said, you pretty much have to start the process all over again.
So anybody listening to this right now, you keep saying the word boat.
Submarine.
Yes. And so I want to make that distinction. So in the Navy, there's ships, which are the big ships that you're on, and then there's boats, which are submarines. Mm-hmm. And which submarine did you end up on?
So I ended up going to a pre-commissioning unit, the USS Indiana SSN-789. So yeah, I had no idea what that was really going to entail, and but it was a brand new Virginia class submarine, and I was initial manning on that. So I got to be stationed at Newport News Shipbuilding down in Virginia, and basically, like, I was there from the initial manning all the way through what they call the post-shakedown availability, which is like they commission the boat, it does a bunch of sea time and kind of break out the kinks, and then it goes back into one more availability, and then after that, it's basically handed over to the Navy, saying, here's your brand new submarine, and you do with it what you want.
And so you are what they call a plank owner, then, right?
Yes.
So you were one of the first crews to come on and be a part of that boat. So was that your whole time in? Did you end up doing some cruises on that boat, that particular boat?
So we did a lot of short underways. I didn't stay on the boat long enough to hit their first deployment. I left in September of 19, and I think they went on their first deployment in March of 2020. And they were really trying to get me to stay, just because I had so much knowledge of the boat from being there from the beginning and all that stuff, and they really wanted me to stay. And I was considering it for a minute, and then in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't, because they went on their deployment right as COVID hit, and from all of my friends that were on the boat, they had the worst deployment ever. They barely pulled into ports. When they did pull into ports, they couldn't leave the pier just because of COVID. Like, they pulled into Spain and had to sit on the pier next to the boat. And I'm like, that was a good call that I did not choose to stay for that.
COVID changed a lot of things, even for the military.
Oh, yeah.
Well, where did you go when you left the Indianapolis then?
Indiana.
I'm sorry, the Indiana.
Yeah. So our very first kind of cruise, when we left Virginia and went down to Port Canaveral, Florida, they do a lot of like weapon testing and stuff down there. So we spent about a week and a half there the first time, and then went out and did some sea time. And then we did like a week in Kings Bay, Georgia, at the submarine base there, doing some more testing, and then spent a few weeks off the coast of the Bahamas in Autech. So that was probably the coolest thing I got to do in the Navy, was get off the boat and go spend a few days in the Bahamas at Autech. It's a very small little Navy base down there, and there's nothing to do but to spearfish, sit on the beach, and drink. So
Nothing wrong with any of that.
Yeah, no, and the booze there is dirt cheap, but it was nice just to get off the boat after we were out for a couple weeks doing all the testing and everything, and then it was nice to get a few days in the sun and the sand and drink some beer.
So you did get to join the Navy and sort of see the world.
I got to see it a little bit, but nothing crazy like foreign countries or anything. So
okay, and then so what did you do after that?
After we got done with all that stuff, when we went to go do that post shakedown availability, originally we were supposed to do it in Newport News Shipyard in Norfolk, or in Newport News, Virginia, and then about 3 weeks before we were scheduled to go on a long underway, we were going to be gone for a couple weeks. They told us, "Hey, plans have changed. We're actually going to go up to Electric Boat in Groton and do the post shakedown availability. And so everybody needs to figure out how to move, how to get a place to live up there. And we're going underway in 2 weeks, and then when we get back, you have 4 weeks to get all your stuff up there and your families and everything." And and we were literally leaving like that. I think it was like a Friday they told us that, and we were leaving on like a Monday. So everybody's like jumping through their hoops to like. A lot of people who had wives and stuff were like a little bit easier for them because their wives could start planning that, looking for places to live. But for all of us single guys and everything, we were just like, I guess we'll figure it out in a couple of weeks when we get back and hope for the best. So that was kind of a, experience. But then, so I took the boat up there to Groton, got through that availability. I did a few more months after that. And then I just stayed up there for shore duty and, went to a shore duty called Performance Monitoring Team. So it was just like a group that we did specialized maintenance items on each of the boats. So just some of the bigger maintenance items we got a little more specialized training on. And so we were in charge of those specific maintenance items for all the submarines in Groton, not just the one I was on. So I definitely learned a lot there. Got to go to a lot of cool schools and stuff for that. And it was a good time.
So at what point, and I'm just kind of thinking about this, at what point did you have to go to submarine school? Because isn't there a part where you got to know that you're going to be okay on a submarine?
So nukes do not go to submarine school.
Okay.
So that's like one of the things I think they assume if you can make it through nuke school, you can make it through being on a submarine. That's not always the case, obviously, but. We don't go through submarine school. So it's, the submarine force is a completely voluntary, service. So I actually didn't, volunteer until I was in prototype. I spent a lot of time before I joined the Navy, even just like, researching, submarines, carriers. And, for the longest time I was like, I'm going to go to a carrier. I'm going to go to a carrier. And then I'm at one of the instructors at prototype was like, you should join submarines, which everybody tells you that, but like, I don't know what it was about him. He just convinced me. He was like, a lot smaller crew, a lot more tight knit, a lot more camaraderie. And, it's just more people caring about each other. You get to know everybody on the boat. Whereas like aircraft carriers, I've seen people like served on the same aircraft carrier for years and never met each other, didn't know each other. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, it started to sound better and better to me. And then, like, I was halfway through prototype and I was like, is it too late to, go submarines? And like, no, not at all. So then I did. And I definitely think it was a better decision in the long run.
Okay. So what was Groton like?
I actually didn't mind Groton. It was pretty similar, like weather-wise and stuff, to Michigan, so that never bothered me. But a lot of people always called it rotten Groton. But
People will complain no matter where they're at.
that is true. See, I did not like Norfolk. Norfolk was not for me, but Groton, it was nice. Like I said, like going from Norfolk being the biggest naval base in the world to Groton, which is probably one of the smallest, Navy bases in the world, like it was a lot better. I liked it. It was a lot more quiet, peaceful. Like, you don't have as much traffic getting into work. Like you have 3 or 4 carriers in Norfolk. It takes you an hour to get 5 minutes down the road just because of the sheer number of people trying to get to work. But I thought the Northeast was really nice. I bought a house in Mystic, Connecticut, and lived there. That was super nice. All our family that got to come visit, they all loved it. It was really nice.
And then, so you spent the rest of your time in Groton then?
Yes.
And then, so what happens next?
So around that time, I kind of rekindled the flame with my high school girlfriend.
Okay, so I was going to ask about that because I heard high school girlfriend, and then I didn't hear anything about the girlfriend after that. So
yeah, so we spent 2 years or so after I joined still dating, and then the distance just kind of got to be too much, and we just decided it was better just to take a break and go our own ways for a while. And then we saw each other occasionally when I came home on leave, and talk every now and then. But right at the time where I was getting the boat, leaving the boat, going to shore duty, I was like, hey, I'm going to shore duty. I'm not to go out to sea. I'll be home. Like, if we're gonna make this happen, we need to either make it happen or completely break it off, just for our own sakes. And at the time, she was about to graduate nursing school, so she was like, "Yeah, I'm about to graduate school, and so I don't have anything else going on, so I can move, I can come live with you and move to Connecticut." And I'm like, "Awesome, let's really give this a full shot and see where it goes, so that way for both our sakes we know whether it was meant to be or it wasn't." So then that was in December of 19. She moved in with me, and then 3 months later, in March of 2020, we got married and had a nice little COVID wedding. Basically eloped in Mystic, and only us and a photographer were there, and it turned out to be really nice and really beautiful, and I couldn't ask for it to really go a better way.
So a good COVID story.
Yes.
And for people listening to this in the future, Google or whatever the search engine is of your day, COVID, and you'll know what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. The pandemic that hit in 2020 and seemed to last for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So once you got married, you're doing your shore duty. Can you talk a little bit more about what shore duty is like for someone in the nuke program?
Yeah. So for nukes, we have a little bit less shore duty options. You can either go back to the school in South Carolina and be an instructor there. They also have a prototype up in Ballston Spot, New York. It's just a prototype up there. But your basic options are going to be an instructor at the school, which they say is the best for your career progression. You can be a recruiter, or you can go work for like one of the maintenance people, kind of like what I did. And there's a couple oddball here and there stuff, but for the most part, it's pretty much one of those. And pretty much all of them are, besides the instructor at the school, are negative for your careers, except for the one that I went to is kind of in the middle. It's not great for your career, but it's also not a career killer. But yeah, like I said, I did a lot of specialized maintenance on the boats, and I got to go to different schools from like civilian vendors. I got to go to I don't know if you ever heard of FLIR, thermal imagers, but I got to go to 2 schools with them. I got to go to a carrier HVAC troubleshooting course in Syracuse, New York for 2 weeks, and a couple other stuff like that. So I got a lot of like real like civilian world experience from that. But shore duty in general was great. I worked like so many less hours than I did on the boat. And when we really had nothing going on, I would maybe work 20 hours a week, go in and leave. If we had nothing going on, leave at lunch. Every holiday off pretty much. Still had duty, but it wasn't too bad. It was once or twice a month, we had to stay overnight. But yeah, every holiday off pretty much, lots of time at home. And there were days when we had a lot of work to do, and then, we 10, 12-hour days, whatever. But like I said, for the most part, we had nothing going on. They're like, all right, why are you guys here? Go home, enjoy your time.
Mm-hmm. And so now you are back in Michigan.
Yes.
Okay. And tell me a little bit about that. What was it like, leaving,
transitioning?
Yeah, leaving the Navy.
So it's been a roller coaster, that's for sure. So I got to take advantage of the skill bridge program, and I got to leave Groton about 6 months earlier than when I was supposed to get out. So I got to come back here in October of 22, and I got hooked up with a company down in Detroit, learning how to do some manufacturing stuff, some CNC machines, and just kind of stuff that's like interesting for me as like a hobby. But that got me home, got us back to all of our family, and our son was born in March of 2022. So he was a couple months old, and we were just excited to get all of us back home and be back with family after me being gone for 10 years. It was a good decision.
Well, good. And, you're a little younger than a lot of the folks that I do interview for this. So there's a lot more to come in your life. So maybe we can catch up in 10 years and add to your story as we go forward.
Yeah, definitely.
But as we wrap up our conversation today, what kind of advice would you give to someone listening to this years from now?
Definitely, take the time to figure out, what you want to do in life, what you want out of life. Just really think about it. Don't jump into anything too hastily, and, work hard and, do your best in life. That's all you can do.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Veterans Archives, the podcast that brings you the story of the men and women who have created and lived our military history. If you or someone you know served in the military and would like to share your story with Veterans Archives, please go to www.veteransarchives.org, select the Apply Now button, and fill out our application, and someone will get right back with you. Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on the donations of our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and you support our efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the Donate button. Any donation is certainly appreciated. Look for Veterans Archives on your favorite social media. We are on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look for Veterans Archives. Like, follow, and share our page. We'd certainly appreciate it. If you or someone you know is a veteran and you are struggling with mental health issues, please dial 988 and select option 1 for the Veterans Crisis Hotline. Please be sure to tune in next time for the next episode of Veterans Archives.